What's up guys, Intelitech Studios here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Kenmore PowerPath system. This is a Panasonic design machine from back in the era when Sears Kenmore had a lot of different machines, although unlike a lot of the Hoovers, Eurekas, Sebos, and Phantoms that most people remember being under the Kenmore branding in a special partnership with Sears, but knowing that they were for sure those original brands, this Panasonic made machine is from the era when people associated this design not with Panasonic, but with Kenmore. A lot of these machines, especially in the later progressive series of uprights, a lot of people associate those with Kenmore specifically, and this machine is no exception. This is the Kenmore PowerPath system, but at its heart, soul, blood, and core, it is a Panasonic made and built machine with Kenmore's name slapped on it. Very typical of the time. Now, this machine, of course, since it is at its core Panasonic, it has a lot of the similar features and aspects that you would come to like from a Panasonic, which we'll get into in a sec. First off, we can see there is the main sticker on this machine, and I don't really see any obvious date code on this. But this machine, from what I understand, is older than it looks. It looks like it'd be early 2000s, but from what I understand, it actually is 90s. And right off the bat, we're going to get into some complaints, because as much as I love Panasonic machines, this particular machine feels a bit sloppier in design and overall usability than your typical Panasonic, even though it is at its core a Panasonic and has a lot of the niceties of a Panasonic. First off, to get some of the positives out of the way, this machine, despite it being not necessarily heavy but not necessarily lightweight either, it's incredibly smooth to use and operate. The balance of the machine when you've got it down in the position that you would use it when you're vacuuming, it's actually very nice, and it's balanced very well, and it makes it to where it's almost as easy to use as some other machines that weigh about half as much as it, which is very impressive. Now, a little thing that I noticed, and ironically, I was going to complain about this in this review, but it fixed itself literally right before I turned the camera on. This machine, for whatever reason, the release latch, which the idea is you're supposed to be able to put your foot anywhere, new shoes by the way, you're supposed to be able to put your foot anywhere, although ideally on this little patch over here, and that's supposed to give you enough friction to recline it. Now it's working properly, but in the entire time that I was using this, in the multiple weeks that I've been using this, or months actually, in preparation for this review, I had to force it down, and I felt like I was breaking it because it required a lot of force. And I'd always step in the center of it to not put uneven pressure on the base and break it, because this machine is very brittle. Much like a lot of the Dysons and machines of this era, this machine's plastic has definitely gone brittle, and you want to be careful with it. It does still have some flex to it, but it's not built as well as, I'm going to say it, it's not as built as well as some of the cheaper machines, like a lot of these Bissels, which, yeah, I know that sounds blasphemous, but if you've handled one of these, you see exactly what I'm talking about. Also, in regards to the handling, while this machine is definitely weighted very well, and pushing and pulling it's very nice, this handle is awful. As you can see, it just twists freely, as it is not anchored to this handle at all. It's just friction fit, which means when you're pushing and pulling the machine, you can feel the handle slide on and off this unfinished metal handle. And it's very annoying, because when you go to pick up the machine, you can feel the handle slide off of the wand, and you can see there I just push the whole thing back down, and it's got that little air hole in it, so that way you can do that. But like, you can see if I pull a bit more off, now you can see this is all squishy because the metal isn't on it. I don't know why, they just don't anchor these things properly. And for a while when I had this machine, this was very sticky. Although it's to its credit, it wasn't actually rubber reversion. I was really worried about that. This handle, I believed, was rubber reverting because it got very sticky, but after wiping it down with a disinfecting wipe and wiping it down with some alcohol on a rag, the stickiness actually went away. So one thing that's very nice about this is that the rubber reversion has not set in on this particular handle. Although it is still a very rubbery material, so keep in mind if you store it in a place that is susceptible to UV and a lot of heat, it can get really sticky, especially if it's in storage or in a garage or something. A lot of rubbery plastic of this era got really sticky because the actual compound was turning back into a greasy liquid, and it's quite gross. Thankfully, my exact example did not succumb to that, even though I initially believed that it did. But that is something to keep an eye out for these. Some of these can do that, and not only would it coming off be annoying, but it being sticky would be even more annoying. So, yeah, and that's something I gotta mention, because handles are something I always complain about. And I can't think of a better example than this terrible thing. I will make any excuse that I can to mention this awful handle. But thankfully, this doesn't have a handle that's that bad. So, yeah, right off the bat, when you're handling the machine, it actually is balanced very well. But the handle, in terms of its shape, position, and its looseness, gets very annoying. Also, no carrying handle. Really frustrating. A machine that at this point was way more expensive than plenty of other offerings, and yet does not have a carrying handle. And yet a lot of cheaper machines on the market did have a carrying handle, like the later Bissell Power Glides and Bissell Power Forces. To be fair, a lot of the Hoover Elites at this time wouldn't have a carrying handle, but plenty of other machines from the time did, even heavier machines. This did not. You're expected to just grab it from the wand, at least I presume, because where else are you supposed to grab the darn thing? Again, little things that might not seem like big deals, but if you're like me and you're carrying machines from the vacuum room upstairs, and you're carrying them, up and down the stairs in order to use them, and there's no good way to carry it, that's kind of frustrating. So, again, little complaints that shouldn't matter, but they do. Also, the height adjustment on this particular machine does run very high, so I have to put it on the extra low setting. Something that I also have to do with all my Phantoms, because the height adjustment on this just sits too high. And this particular one does have some casing rattle, so it does agitate really, really well. Or I shouldn't say that, that's not because of that, but it seems like it agitates even better than it does, but it already does agitate very well. These machines are incredible deep cleaners, and they're very analogous to a lot of Panasonics. And a lot of people will compare them to a Riccar Vibrance, but a Riccar Vibrance is 10 times worse than any Panasonic. They clean the exact same for the most part, and Vibrances are somehow even worse built than these ones. Again, I don't understand the people that say that these are well built, but then say that these aren't. It makes no sense. This machine is far more sturdy and far more long-lasting than this machine. And, a lot of these machines are starting to break down. Heck, I even had one break during shipping, which is not fun. Anyways, enough of the rambling. Speaking of the attachments, which I don't think I was talking about the attachments, this does have the same attachment fitting, not only as Panasonic, which that part's probably expected, it's literally the exact same set of attachments, but also newer Dysons and Bissells from the era, so you can fit plenty of other attachments onto this hose. Now, these attachments that it come with are fine, but another complaint I've got is the attachment storage, and this also bleeds into all the Panasonics as well. If you see, you've got 2 extension wands on board, which I will always compliment. That's really nice. Having one that you always keep on the machine is nice, because whenever you pull it out, you've already got the wand attached. That's a nice feature as well. However, for some reason, these tabs are very brittle, and they like to break, something that doesn't happen on cheaper machines like the Bissells and the wind tunnels. Also, unlike a lot of the Bissells, there is no attachment peg here to actually hold this wand in place. So as it moves and flexes, it slides down off of the actual holster, which means that this is scratching right here, which is annoying. Because again, cheap Bissells from back then, they've got a little peg right there to keep the wand in place. This doesn't have that. Also, the crevice tool storage. It sits way too low, so whenever you bump this on furniture, it breaks the peg off. And because normally these are supposed to sit right around here, so that way there's enough of a gap, but this little tab always breaks, and they end up getting pushed down like that. And you can see the rest of this is starting to crack through, and it's very much wanting to break. And this machine is not brittle. I mean, it's not exactly gone brittle. It's a little bit discolored, but it should not be going brittle. And yet all these are going brittle. So these attachment pegs are not built very well, which again, for a machine that was way more expensive than the Bissell Power Glides of the era, and even the Hoover wind tunnels, it just the build quality just isn't as good. And it's really strange because no other vacuum reviewer ever mentions, as much as I love these Panasonics and these Kenmore made Panasonics, you can tell that this particular Kenmore was built to spec and was clearly sold at a lower price point than a lot of the Panasonics of the time. For the record, I didn't fact check that. I actually don't know what this sold for originally. Probably should have did that before I did this review. But nevertheless, these days, I mean, I paid only $10 for this, so for that price, it's an amazing machine. But to be fair, this was also $10, and I'd rather use this over this, despite this having a terrible bagless system. And speaking of bags and bagless, we've got this release latch up here that is really annoying and half the time doesn't like to engage properly, although this time it was just fine. And we've got our Kenmore bag that, of course, typical of Kenmore of the time, you know, it's okay. You know, it has a nice little tab to pull the bag off. You've got a little filter right there, suction relief. Of course, there's a lot of coarse debris in the filter, as there also typically is, but you can get HEPA bags for these really easy. These can use the same bags as the Riccar Vibrants, as a lot of the Simplicities of the era, and they can use Cirrus bags and Panasonic bags, of course. So you can find very nice, high-quality bags for these. And if I was to keep this machine, I definitely would put a really nice Cirrus HEPA bag in it if I was to run it, because the filtration quality on this would be a lot better. Unfortunately, there is no proper post-motor filtration on these machines. Unlike some of the later Kenmore machines that would actually have a proper HEPA filter, you can tell this one is a more basic model because... Oh, and of course, now that I'm trying to push this... Great, so I dropped my phone and it stopped filming, but as you can see, there is I said proper, which proper is subjective, but there is technically some type of filter here, but it's more of a sound dampening than it really is a filter. Although, to be fair, I haven't pulled off this motor cover, so I can't verify that. It definitely is a form of post-motor filtration, but it's not HEPA. It's definitely not a sealed system. So, again, you definitely want to run HEPA bags in this thing, because you will definitely find that this is, you know, going to filter a lot better with a HEPA bag, because there is no HEPA filter to, you know, fall back on. So be careful. If you're daily driving one of these, definitely expense the HEPA bags, because it's worth it if you're going to be using this. But again, there's other machines you can get that you can run HEPA bags and HEPA filters for a lot cheaper if you are daily driving this machine, and a lot of those machines have parts available as well. These don't, of course. Now, back in the day, these were actually fairly solid machines, and, you know, you really couldn't complain too much if you had one of these. But there is a reason why not many people bought these compared to the millions and millions of power forces that exist out there. And that's just because, well, for the price, what are you really gaining from a more cheap machine? Not saying this is a bad machine, because it's not. Like I said, it handles beautifully, it cleans beautifully. The amount of reach on this machine is fantastic for a machine with a very simple hose design without a hose wand. So all that is great. And you do have, when it's working, a nice big bright headlight in here, which is definitely really nice. You don't see those very often anymore. You do have side feed suction, unfortunately, and it's actually going to be all the way off to the side, unlike some even cheaper machines where it's like closer to this, like halfway between the center and the side. So much like the Eureka 4870, this is going to have completely side feed suction. So while the cleaning performance on this is great, you're not going to be doing very much on this side, especially over here. So while this is a reasonably wide cleaning path, you're not actually cleaning that entire area effectively. Most of your cleaning is happening on this half of the cleaner head. So you're going to have to overlap your cleaning strokes, which again, you should be doing anyways if you're vacuuming properly. I've said that in almost every video, but that is something to note and to keep in mind, that it's not an even cleaning path, so make sure to vacuum accordingly. These wheels also are not rubber coated, and as you can see, one thing I really respect about this machine is it actually says extra low. It does not say bare floor. This machine does not falsely advertise itself as being functional on bare floors like some stupid machines. This actually correctly says just the carpet height adjustment. I guess it doesn't say carpet, but it says height adjustment. So you got high, medium, low, and extra low. Also, this headlight feels like it's pushing out. But that's where it should be. And again, the way this machine works, the extra low is definitely a necessity, because this height adjustment system runs way too high for most carpeting. So people sometimes speculate, oh, I have a medium pile carpet, so it goes on medium. Yeah, sure, that's great and all, but you got to make sure your vacuum is adjusting properly, because if it's not, you might have to put it lower. But you don't want to put it too low, because you'll burn out your belt and you'll wear out your brush roller. It all depends on your exact carpet. So case in point, I went to go put this on my stairs to test how far this hose reaches, and the handle darn near entirely came off. So there's some ammo for the point that I made earlier. But to address the stair question, since that's a question I always try to answer in my reviews, and I apologize if I ever forget, this machine comfortably gets up 8 stairs, and you could stretch it to 9, but for a full 12, 13 set of stairs, you're going to need an extension hose, which they do make. You can get extension hoses for these, and just like a lot of the Panasonic and Takoti machines, if you've got an extra long hose and you want to basically use this as a canister, you can even leave the hose wrapped up, and you can pop the hose right in the back here and click it on that way, which is actually a really nice feature. So out of the box, you're not going to quite reach all the way up your stairs unless you have a landing, but there are options to expand the reach and make it better. And even out of the box, it's still much better than a lot of the cheaper machines like the Bissel's. The hose has a lot more stretchiness to it, and the hose itself is a lot higher quality. They don't tend to split nearly as often as some more cheaper vacuums hoses. Alright, now we'll give it a quick run just to show you what all it sounds like and everything. And if I can get this, because both the wands do actually kind of not click, but there's like a little notch that they fit into, which can be a little tricky to get this in. Now, the motor on this sounds very similar to a lot of the Eureka's of the time. It's got that kind of lower pitch, and it actually is a fairly nice motor. Even if it isn't the quietest, it's also not the loudest either, so that'll be interesting to take a look. Again, the headlight's burnt out, but it does sound very nice. Now remember, my machine does have a little bit of play in the brush roller housing, so it's going to be a little bit more casing rattle than you would hear on a fully brand new or perfect condition one of these. But that didn't affect the cleaning performance or anything, so I don't believe it colored my review. As I did already point out, this machine does have excellent carpet cleaning abilities. It does burn carpet a little bit too, but that also could be because it's on the extra low setting. This is one of those machines where you do have to be careful about where it's adjusted at when it's upright, unfortunately. But this machine does work very well. Even though I don't really prefer these machines to the cheaper Bissell's for the reasons I outlined earlier, a lot of the designs as far as the tool storage, as far as the overall setup of the machine with the height adjustment and the pedal release and the handle slipping off, a lot of those issues to me are quality of life improvements that, since they don't exist on cheaper machines like the Power Forces and the Power Glides and a lot of the Maytag wind tunnels, I don't really see why back in the day you would have chosen this machine over those machines as a Power Force 3522 or a Maytag wind tunnel, especially once they added the CWP brush rollers. Those machines clean just as well as this, and those machines are generally quieter, a little bit easier to work with. The wind tunnel will be a little bit heavier in the hand, the Bissell will be a little bit lighter in the hand. So they're very similar, and the Bissell wouldn't have as much reach, but the wind tunnel, there is an extension hose you can get for the wind tunnel, just like there is for this, that can give you more reach with that wind tunnel. And yeah, I just don't really see how I would pick this machine in a lineup next to a wind tunnel and a Power Force and even a Eureka Victory. I feel like this would be the last of all those choices, and I especially would pick this, I would not pick this more than a real Panasonic that would be a little bit better built. And that's the thing. If you have one of these machines and you're looking to upgrade, since these types of machines with this body style are not on the market anymore, there are plenty of options. And ironically, a lot of the Bissels that I just mentioned have outlasted this design here in the States, as you can still find the Sanitaire SL4110A and the Bissell Big Green Commercial BGU1451T, the former of which actually has a metal handle, very similar to the Kenmore, but the handle on it is solid. It's not as rubbery, it's more of a hard plastic, but it still has a soft touch material, and it's way more secure on the machine. So if you have one of these and you're looking to upgrade to something modern, something like this is what I'd recommend, and I will have both of these tagged in the products in the description. Now, unfortunately, these machines are, including the Panasonic variants, are out of production, so if you really like these, you're not going to find parts, so keeping one of these working is going to be annoying if you're not a vacuum collector. And however, that being said, if you're looking at this machine and you really want one, good news. This one will be for sale shortly after I post this video, once I find a box big enough for this. So yeah, I don't like this machine in particular. I prefer my Panasonic Performance Plus Platinum, and yeah, I mean, as far as how this stacks up to this versus something like the Twin Energy, it's hard to say. It's hard to say because I haven't used that machine in a while, but I feel like this I'd like less than that. Again, for the $10 I paid, it's still a great machine, but if I was buying this on the shelf back in the day, I think I would have taken it back to the store. I would have been disappointed, especially compared to what I have. And presumably, if I believe this is from the late 90s, I'm sure someone can correct me on that. So if I had this and something like this, yeah, it's safe to say that the Fury would absolutely curb stomp this machine for probably a similar price, because there was a time when these were on sale for about $170, and I have a hard time believing that this was much cheaper than that. So yeah, it doesn't get a recommendation from me, but again, it's an old machine anyway, so it doesn't really matter what my opinion is. But of all the hundreds of vacuums that I've used, shocker, this one's not my favorite. A lot of people complain whenever I don't rate every single vacuum with the most amount of positivity, but look, when you've been through hundreds of machines, you're bound to not like something, and this is one of those machines. And that's the thing, is I don't hate this machine because during the first week or so that I was daily driving it, I actually did quite enjoy it, but once you use a machine for several weeks, a lot of the flaws start to show up. And in this case, that's what it was. It's not a bad machine, but it's not going to stay in the collection. Anyways, this is Inteltech Studios signing out. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Oh, I said that. Oh no, I said that properly. I didn't say the usual outro. Oh goodness, let's restart that. Anyways, this is Inteltech Studios signing out. Have a good one. Peace.